Let us now go to the New Testament where Jesus is driven into the wilderness to be tempted by the evil one in his attempt to steal the seed. We find it in 3 different accounts. Let us start with Mark, who has the least to say about it. And it came to pass in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And immediately, as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens open and the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven saying, "You are my Son, the beloved, in whom I have great delight." Jesus had just been baptized and heard the voice, or the word, from Elohim that declared that he was a son, and that Elohim was pleased with him. Remember, Jews do not believe that they are sons of Elohim. To them, that was blasphemy. But Jesus wasn't playing ball with the religious leaders. The Jewish leaders answered Pilate, "We have a law, and according to the law, he must die because he made himself out to be the Son of God." The law in question is the blasphemy law in Leviticus 24:16. "And he that blasphemies the name of Yahuwah, he shall surely be put to death, and all the assembly shall certainly stone him." Yahuwah does not have sons. He only has servants. The Jewish authorities believed that Jesus claiming to be the Son of God was blasphemy because, in their understanding, he was a mere man claiming divine status, a direct violation of the law. So Jesus was puncturing or piercing their view of who God was and who they were in relation to God. And just like we saw when this yellow smiley ball was punctured, blasphemy.
Over and over again, he has broken the Sabbath.
Yahuwah commands his death.
I agree with you. Okay, now what?
We have no choice. We must kill him.
Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So what happens to people caught working on the Sabbath? When the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly, and they kept him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him.
You have been found guilty of gathering wood on the Sabbath. I must bring this up before Yahuwah. The man must die. Stone him. Do it now.
The assembly took him outside the camp and stoned him to death, as the Lord Yahuwah commanded Moses. So what's the summary of all this? And immediately the Spirit drives him into the wilderness. It means to cast out, eject by force, to expel, force away, to expel a person from a society, to banish from a family. So what happens to you? If you truly believe the word, it can turn everyone against you. All your friends, all of your family, and those closest to you, etc. No wonder it's called a wilderness. It's a place where few people are. A place not well traveled. A lonely place. And you may become an outcast. It's a place where wild beasts try to devour you. This is what you may encounter if you are serious about acquiring salvation too. No wonder few find it. There is something about this wilderness that you need to understand. It is a great blessing that the Spirit drives you immediately into the wilderness, and it is a necessary thing for victory. In other words, you're hungry, you're lacking something. Satan's telling him, let's use Yahuwah's method of forming bread from these stones. Satan was trying to tell Jesus that Elohim really didn't care about him, so he needed to do something to save himself by making some bread out of the stones. In other words, to believe that he was lacking. And according to outer appearances, he needed to take things into his own hands to save himself and his ego, to use a Yahuwah tactic of forming something outside of Elohim, using his own strength in his flesh in an attempt to save himself. Satan was telling him that Elohim was holding out on Jesus, just like with Eve in the garden. Here were the lies that Yahuwah was whispering into his ear. If Elohim really loves you, why isn't Elohim doing anything about your situation and your hunger? Where is Elohim? Doesn't Elohim care? These were probably some of the thoughts that were going through Jesus' mind that he had to cast down. But he put no faith in what his physical senses were telling him. Again, Satan was trying to get Jesus to think he lacked something and to mimic Yahuwah, who formed things from something already created, and to turn stones into bread. But the word of Elohim is the source and power of everything that we have need of. Jesus didn't need to do anything to save himself. Jesus already had food that was greater than what flesh and blood could do. Satan was thinking small, but Jesus was thinking big. Jesus knew that he already possessed everything pertaining to life and godliness and was lacking nothing. His physical body and outward appearances were trying to tell him something different, but Jesus refused to give in to his flesh and to Satan and to think that he lacked something, even food, while he was growing hungry. But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahuwah." Matthew 4:4 from the Sefer version. Almost all of these translations say that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. None of them give a name for God like the Sefer version does. Why then did the Sefer version insert the name Yahuwah? Rhema, G4487. A command, a mandate, direction, and utterance, individually, collectively, or specifically, by implication, a matter or topic, command, saying, word. It's a saying word. A rhema from Elohim would never contradict the Logos himself. All of Elohim's words are consistent with his character. Elohim will never have to give an account for any evil spoken word. I have said it over and over again. I know. Always remember that in Elohim there is no darkness at all. In our fleshy humanity, it is different. We all have partaken from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and most, if not all of our lives, we have spoken both good and evil words. Therefore, the next verse holds true. But I tell you that men will give an account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. Careless means barren. Words that do not produce good fruit. Words that produce thorns. But we do not see this problem with Jesus, who only spoke the words of Elohim. Here is what he said. I say only what the Father has instructed me to say. I speak what I have seen in the presence of the Father. I have not spoken on my own, but the Father who sent me has commanded me what to say and how to say it. Now we're going to see a couple very interesting things about when Jesus replied to Satan, saying, "It is written." It appears at first glance that Jesus is agreeing with Yahuwah, but that's not the case. This verse comes from Deuteronomy 8:3. I love what we can learn from this. He, Yahuwah, made you grow hungry, and then he gave you manna to eat. Food that you and your ancestors had never eaten before. He did this to teach you that you must not depend on bread alone to sustain you, but on everything that the Lord Yahuwah says. So do you see what's going on here? First, Yahuwah makes you hungry. Then Yahuwah gives you some manna food, kind of like a yo-yo. Then it says that he does this so that you would depend upon him. Depend upon Yahuwah. So it's all about control. Just like in the garden, Yahuwah wants you to think that you are lacking something, and that you must go through him to acquire food, and only him. In contrast, Elohim says that he has already given you everything. There is nothing that you lack. It's already done. It's past tense. Jesus knew this. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you through the knowledge of Elohim. Elohim has given unto us all things. It's past tense. It's a done deal. Yahuwah is a control freak. Now let's look at it in another translation. It gets even more interesting. This passage has nothing to do with speaking or saying anything. Out of 62 different translations, 38 of them include, "Man lives by every word that proceeds out of Yahuwah's mouth." Several of them place italics on the word "word." This means that this word was added by the translators and was not in the original language. This is a clue that something funny is going on. Darby's translation says it like this: "But everything that goeth out of the mouth of Jehovah doth man live." Young's literal translation says, "By bread alone doth man live, but by every produce of the mouth of Jehovah man doth live." We saw in previous episodes that it was breath that came out of Yahuwah's mouth. He breathed into Adam, and Adam became a living soul. Mankind took on the character of Yahuwah. Mankind shall experience salvation too once they hear and obey the Rhema words that are coming out of the mouth of Elohim. H1697 is the Old Testament equivalent of Rhema, but H1697 is not found in Deuteronomy 8:3. Jesus was living by the Rhema of Elohim, not the breath or produce of Yahuwah. So this passage in Deuteronomy is actually telling us they trusted in Yahuwah as their life source. And when they quit breathing, they were dead. And they would go back to the dust from which they came because they were no longer breathing. With Yahuwah as God, men had totally lost their understanding of who they were and knowing that they were eternal beings, one with Elohim, who is eternal. So let's go back to the verse in Matthew. It is written, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahuwah. G 4487, that is, proceeding out of the mouth of Yahuwah? The Sefer translation missed it big time in this verse. The word was not coming from the mouth of Yahuwah at all. We are to live by every word that comes from Elohim. It is taking from the Logos and applying it to whatever situation that you may be facing. It is part of salvation too. Rhema is a specific part of the Logos applied to space and time here on the earth. It effectively is bringing a piece of heaven to the earth. Rhema may appear to be fresh and new, but it comes out of the Logos, which is already complete and finished. Rhema is causing that which is real to appear into the dream world of flesh. Jesus, our salvation, is the Word made flesh. Jesus is the Logos, or the complete Word of God made flesh in its entirety. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and Elohim was the Word. Did Yahusha try to argue with the voice from the evil one? No. He just merely cast down the thought when it came. Yahusha said he didn't need bread, even though he was hungry. And later on, he said the same thing to his disciples when they were hungry. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Again, Jesus is tempted in the wilderness to question the word given to him about his sonship with the Father when he was baptized. If you be the Son of Elohim, cast yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest at any time you dash your foot against a stone. Jesus knew he was living in a flesh body, and he was living in a world that was formed by Yahuwah. Throwing himself off of the temple would be testing the laws that were set up in this world that Yahuwah had formed. And one of those laws was the law of gravity. So he was not about to jump off and believe Satan's lie that his life of flesh would be spared, especially when Satan claimed that it would be. Jesus attempted a third time, and this time Satan didn't even bother to question Jesus' sonship. He merely tried to get Jesus to think that Elohim was holding out on him and that he had something to give that Elohim didn't have. And the devil took him up into an exceedingly high mountaintop and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and said unto him, all these things will I give you if you will fall down and worship me. Get you hence, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Yahuwah, your God, and him only shall you serve. Traditionally, we have been told that this means that Jesus was saying everyone should worship Yahuwah, as found in Deuteronomy 10:20. But what if Jesus was talking directly to Satan? The way this is written, Jesus said you, not everyone. Satan was formed by Yahuwah. Satan was serving Yahuwah since the very beginning in the garden. Satan could only offer Jesus the kingdoms of the world with Yahuwah's approval. Satan could not worship or serve Elohim because he was not created by Elohim. He could only serve Yahuwah. And Yahusha, Jesus, knew it was a lie that if he worshiped Satan, then all the kingdoms of the world would be given to him. Yahusha knew who formed these kingdoms, and he knew who Satan was working for. And that's why he said Satan should only worship and serve Yahuwah. If Yahusha bowed down to Satan, nothing would change except for one thing. both Satan and himself would be worshiping Yahuwah. Fortunately, Yahusha knew better. He wasn't about to bow down. He knew that his Father had already given him everything. Yahusha didn't want Satan's kingdoms. He already knew of an invisible kingdom of his own which was far superior to anything on earth. And if Yahusha would have bowed down, then he would have agreed that he was lacking something, and he would have ended up in the same boat as Adam and Eve. Lost in a dream. Lost in a nightmare. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have it in abundance. But the one who does not have even what he has will be taken away from him.